So today I had originally planned to teach differently than I'm going to teach this morning. And the reason why I've changed what I was going to do is in thinking about His Holiness Dingwa Khyentse Rinpoche and his passing. I think that I would like to talk about the meaning of losing such a Lama as he, and how it pertains to our practice in this path, how we view the Lama. I don't think I can do that in the very few minutes that I have to talk. There's no way that one can actually accomplish that in such a short period of time, and I'm not really sure that I could even manage if I had a long time to talk. Because there's nothing in the world that has value anything like a Lama such as he. There's nothing in the world that can compare to it. In the world, we seem to think that many things are extremely valuable. We think of property as valuable. Certainly we think of money as the ultimate measure of value. It's so valuable. And we think of, if we're hungry, we think of food as being valuable. You know how focused you can get when you're really, really hungry, when you've only had, say, breakfast and haven't had your lunch yet, and it's dinner time already, and all you can think about is food. Food becomes the ultimate commodity. Food becomes the greatest blessing that there is in the world. And when we eat it with great gusto, shove it in as fast as we can get it. And then we think about beauty as a tremendous commodity. Some people actually use their beauty to earn a living. Some people actually use their beauty to get by in life. Some people just enjoy their beauty and they think of it as a great blessing that they have. There are boats, there are cars, there's art. There are all kinds of things that we think in the world are so precious and irreplaceable. I know that people that are very, very much into art, into paintings and art, for instance, or sculpture, can almost be religious about how precious a certain object of art might be, especially if the artist is dead, and there's no way to have him produce again what he has produced before. That object becomes infinitely precious. But of all those things, although it's hard for us to understand unless we've really turned our minds toward the value of practice and the value of Dharma, it is extremely hard to understand how precious such a Lama is. The things that can be found in the world, according to Buddhist teaching, are things that have a beginning and have an end. Something that was painted had a time in which it was painted, had a time in which it was conceived in the mind of the artist. And according to the Buddhist teaching, if it has a time that it began, then it will have a time that it ends. The appearance of the Lama in the world is like that. Certainly there is a date that marks the Lama's birth, and therefore there is a date that marks the Lama's death. Everything that begins ends in samsara. But the difference is that while the painting may be so beautiful to look at the time that it exists on the earth, the blessing of the Lama comes to us directly from the mind of enlightenment, and the validity of what the Lama has brought to the world does not end. I think about Guru Rinpoche and the great blessing of his having brought Vajrayana Buddhism to Tibet, and how his teaching has survived intact and perfect, and how the blessing of what he gave so long ago has resulted in everything that you see here. Every teaching that you are able to hear here really comes directly from the blessing of Guru Rinpoche and from nowhere else. There is nothing else that can take responsibility for that. I think about the great cycles of Dharma revelation that have appeared in the world since the time of Guru Rinpoche, and they're all due to the blessing of his enlightenment. I think about Lord Buddha 2,500 years ago, who brought the Dharma to the world as we understand it now. And the Dharma is pure, it is intact, it has not been changed, it has not been altered in any regard. And so everything that you see in the world that has anything to do with accomplishing the Buddhist path toward enlightenment results from Lord Buddha's teaching. 2,500 years ago, and yet his body is not here. In Vajrayana Buddhism, we are taught that the appearance of one's own root guru, however simple that guru might appear, or however magnificent, in whatever way, the one that hooks you into the Dharma, that brings you to the Dharma, that ripens your mind within the context of the Dharma, that is to be considered your root guru. And that root guru's blessing, the blessing that is given to you through the accomplishment of the root guru, is none other than the blessing of Guru Rinpoche, is none other than the blessing of Lord Buddha. So that tremendous flow of empowerment does not end with the life of the Lama. In that regard, what we receive from the mind of enlightenment as it appears in the world, or from Lamas such as he, is far more precious than anything that can be found in the world. It has no end. There is no limit. The blessing is inconceivable. It's like dropping a rock into a pond, ripples and ripples and ripples. But in this case, they never end. There is never a time when that blessing does not exist, because it is passed on from student, to teacher to student to teacher to student in an unbroken chain. And the quality, the quantity of whatever realization is brought about is passed on. There is nothing in the world that can bring us any permanent happiness. Relationships, we've all tried that. Relationships bring us happiness for some period of time. And it is even possible for relationships to bring us happiness until the time of our death. Although it seems to be that in these modern times that is extremely rare. But relationships can do that, and if they do that, then we still have the time of death to contend with. Because each and every one of us enters into the afterlife state individually. No one can enter into it in pairs, and at least not under ordinary circumstances. So one cannot bring the validity or the happiness or the joy, the sharing that one might have, even during the most wonderful of relationships, into the afterlife state, into the bardo. One enters into the bardo alone, only with the content of one's mind stream. However, if the relationship was with one's root guru, and if it were based on pure view, and if it were based on devotion, and if it were with a Lama such as His Holiness Dingo Khyentse Rinpoche, the benefit of that relationship actually goes into the after-death state with one, in that it has ripened the mind. It has changed the quality and capacity of the mind. And of course it is with the karma and content and actual fabric of our own minds, of our realization, that we enter into the after-death state. So that is the only condition under which one can engage in a relationship with any other living person and have some lasting value come from it. And that is under the condition that one were to have devotion and connection with a qualified Lama. So that when one, such as he, passes from the world, it's much more tragic, much more meaningful than if all the art on the earth were to disappear. It's much more tragic and much more meaningful than if all the human relationships that brought us any happiness in the world might disappear. Because this is one relationship, this is one happiness, this is one value that has no end, in that it continues to offer empowerment and blessing in a endless and stable way. The appearance of the Lama in the world is not an ordinary circumstance. It may appear to take the form that human beings actually take. But the nature of the Lama is what is significant here, not the body, not the face, not the format, not the appearance. One might look at one Lama and say, oh, this one is wearing robes, and this one is not. One might look at one Lama and say, this one is very tall, and this one is very short. One might say this one has a very kind face, and this one has a stern face or a wrathful face. And based on appearances like that, one might have a different opinion. Yet the nature of the Lama is the same. If the Lama is qualified and has achieved some realization, the blessing is indistinguishable from the primordial wisdom nature. And that is the essence of the blessing. It cannot be terminated by conditions of the world. It cannot be ended in any regard. And its blessing does not end at the time of the cessation of the appearance. Likewise, if all the food of the world were to disappear, it is not as tragic or as meaningful as if a Lama of that quality were to disappear from the world. Well, now, it sounds like we ought to take issue with that. It sounds like in each of our lives, if we had a choice between the passing of such a one as he and the taking away of all of our food, we might naturally wish that we could still have our food, because our food is our life. Within a very short time after the taking away of food, we would no longer live. And so we think that's of the utmost importance. But actually, according to the Buddha's teaching, we were born before, and we have died before. And we have been born, and we have died so many countless times. Not 10 times or 100 times. Lots of times in this, lots of stories that I've heard in this time of clairvoyance and New Age thinking and mediumship and channeling and all the different psychic phenomena that seems to be popular, especially in this country at this time. Psychics will tell us that we've been alive 10 times, and at least 3 of them were famous people, you know, Nefertiti's and Cleopatra and Alexander the Great and all of those wonderful people. King David, that's a popular one. I've met 10 at least. And so we think that it must be that we've lived 10 times, or maybe we've lived 100 times, or maybe 200 times. But according to the Buddha, we have lived inconceivable times. Now, who knows what life forms that we have taken? According to the Buddha, there are many, many different life forms, but certainly we know that in most of those life forms we must have needed some kind of sustenance. And if we have lived even 100 times before, where is the sustenance that we took before? How does it do us any good? How does it benefit us now? Even such an essential thing in the world as food has only a temporary value, only a temporary blessing. Although, of course, it is a blessing. But if 100 lifetimes ago one were to have met with such a Lama as His Holiness Dingo Khyentse Rinpoche and received empowerment from him, received blessing from him, certainly by this time we would have already reaped the benefit of that. By this time we would have already attained some level of realization, so that liberation would be, if not already present, then certainly close at hand. That is the power of such a one as he. I feel that in my life, there's really only a certain value that one can put on this present incarnation. First and foremost, in my mind, it seems that my present incarnation would only be important if I could be of benefit to sentient beings, because that's a personal choice that I have made within the context of my practice. So I hope that I am of benefit to sentient beings, and I hope that I am helping other sentient beings to go toward that permanent state of happiness that Lord Buddha called enlightenment, or the precious awakened state. So that to me is the value of this life. Other than that, the only other value of this life is to continue to broaden or to deepen one's realization. To deepen one's realization to the degree that one moves more and more close toward perfect Buddhahood. And so that to me is the only value of that life, really. If there were no potential to move closer to perfect Buddhahood, and if there were no benefit to sentient beings, what would be the point? So that I could revolve again in cyclic existence, so that I continue to experience birth and death, so that I continue to experience coming together and separation, so that I continue to experience impermanence, so that I continue to experience the chance mix of temporary happiness and temporary suffering that are the very format and fabric of cyclic existence, what would be the point? What would really be the point? Therefore, the value of such a one as he is more firmly understood. Every prayer that I make from my heart consists of transforming this life into a perfect vehicle, this life, my life, into a perfect vehicle by which sentient beings will be benefited and by which the movement toward Buddhahood will be accomplished. And not only that, but a perfect vehicle by which cyclic existence, with all of its different kinds of suffering, can be emptied from its depths. That's my real prayer. I mean, it may take many different forms, and I may read prayers from books, but the bottom line for me is that particular prayer. So, in my mind, the loss of such a one as he is insurmountable. He cannot be replaced. There is nothing in the world as precious as he. And that is, of course, true for me of my own root gurus. Most especially so, because it is they that hooked me and keep me safe and brought me to the Dharma. And that is the attitude of a Vajrayana practitioner. That we view things in the world as being relatively lightweight, really, compared to the weight and profundity and depth of such a one as he, and such an opportunity as the practice of Dharma that a Lama like he can afford to us. There's nothing of the world that can even come close. Even those things that support life, like food, breath, water. In the Vajrayana teaching, we are taught that we should avoid breaking samaya with one's root guru at the cost of one's life. To the cost of one's life. Now, that seems a little harsh, you know. Students that first come into Vajrayana, when they read that, they go, well, cost of one's life, that's intense. We have to think about that. What does that mean? And this is the basis, this is the meaning of it. This is the basis for that decision, for viewing things in that way. Is that the relationship with a guru of that caliber is far more precious than anything that can sustain one's life. And so, for what reason would you break commitment or break samaya with such a one as he? For what reason? To have more time? To continue revolving in samsara? To preserve your life? To have more food? To have better clothing? What would be the reason? What could you think of? Of course, the proper view is that there is no reason, because there is no value like that anywhere in the world. The other thought that comes to my mind when I think about the passing of such a one as Dingo Khyentse Rinpoche is the tremendous blessing that Dharma affords us. Of course, I can speak only of this particular path that is taught here in this particular temple with any knowledgeability at all. And of course, as any good Dharma practitioner will tell you, my knowledgeability about Dharma is extremely limited, because Dharma is so great and so vast that if any one of us were to study it from the beginning of our lives until the end, we could not accomplish it. Accomplish knowing every part of it. But one thing I do know about this particular practice of Dharma is that the most important thing that this path seems to offer, in my mind, is it offers us a way to utilize our lives to its utmost benefit, firstly, and then secondarily, it offers us a way to die. It offers us a way to die. One of the most profound technologies associated with Buddhism is the technology of dying. We have a most fantastic, most profound, most articulate technology for dying. In Vajrayana Buddhism, it is explained to us what the time of death is actually like. And there are certain experiences that are had due to the dissolution of the elements within one's body and the dissolution of one's connection with the physical realm. It is explained to us in such a way as that we can actually understand what happens as our perceptual process dissolves, perceptual process as we know it. What actually takes place during that time? What are the sensations? What are the actual feelings? That is explained very, very well in Vajrayana Buddhism. And particularly, there are certain practices that one learns to accomplish during that time, and one accomplishes according to the level of one's realization. There is a very mechanical practice that one practices, one level of poa, or time of death practice, in which one actually moves the consciousness, moves the awareness out the central channel into a state of realization. And the techniques are given, and one actually practices them until one achieves signs, actually physical signs, indicating that the central channel has been cleared and that one is prepared for that experience. One uses the breath, one uses perception, one uses one's meditation. It's a very profound practice. And there are different levels of practicing the POA. If one has a greater state of realization than just the ordinary practice, one can practice a thorough renunciation of all things that one is attached to in the world. And one can practice, through the use of devotion, moving one's heart into the primordial nature of the Guru, or into the primordial nature of the realized state. And then if one is truly realized, that is to say accomplished, and has received physical signs during the life and at the time of death of one's accomplishment, physical signs, not I think I've really aced it, but physical signs, there's a difference. Then, at the time of one's death, one can practice in such a way as to simply transfer the consciousness from the relative state of ignorance to the state of bliss or awakening. But one has to have really attained realization previously in order to accomplish that. The teaching is such that one who is not a good practitioner, or who is not a practitioner at all, actually fears the time of death. And you have something to fear. There is something to fear. The time of death is a very difficult time. Once the elements are dissolved, the mind is free to display itself in an instantaneous way, and that does not mean that only the good qualities of the mind are able to display themselves. Actually, it's pretty much a toss-up as to what one experiences during the intermediate experience between death and rebirth. Because all sentient beings have within their mind pridefulness, hatred, ignorance, greed or grasping, longing, clinging, jealousy, competitiveness, all of these things. We all have that. Arrogance, intellectual arrogance, spiritual arrogance. These things displayed can cause one to take a very unfortunate and very difficult rebirth, even in a lower realm. If one is clinging very hard to one's life at the time of death, one can be born into a very strong desire realm in which the suffering can never be satisfied due to the karma of desire. If one experiences a great deal of competitiveness and pride, one can be born into a very competitive realm, a realm that is actually called a God realm, but it's a God realm of great suffering, in that all one experiences is a deeply competitive atmosphere and a warlike mind state, and it's experienced constantly. And if one dies with anger, resentfulness, vengefulness, hatred, that mind can display itself as being reborn in a very hellish realm. All of these things can and do occur. The experiences that happen at the time of death, if not understood, are easily mistaken. For instance, if one is truly a solid and practiced meditator, if one has accomplished in meditation, that means has recognized, and this is recognized with visible signs, the primordial wisdom nature, then at the time of death, one will again recognize the primordial wisdom nature. But for most sentient beings, and that is to say, all sentient beings who have not achieved the rainbow body at the time of death, again with signs, that experience of the primordial wisdom nature is not recognizable, and it is experienced as a period of dullness or sleepiness, as though one's consciousness or awareness had temporarily fainted. That is the experience of the majority. The majority, how can I say how majority that is? 99.999999% of sentient beings experience that at the time of their death. At the time of one's death, one can experience a condition of great, strong color impression. And there are two major colors that are experienced, one of red and one of white. If one is not trained to understand what each of those experiences mean and how to respond to them appropriately, one will run from fear from the intensity of that experience. While if one is trained and prepared for that experience, one will understand what the nature of that experience is, and in opening to that experience, one will achieve realization. So there are many experiences that one needs to understand and much technology that must be accomplished during the time of one's death. The one who is not accomplished in that way is afraid at the time of one's death. And even though they think that they are ready to go and that they are very old, and sometimes old people will say that they're ready to let go because they are feeling much pain or much suffering, still, at the moment of death, when one's breathing stops and one cannot take breath again, there is fear. One wishes to breathe again. That is natural. Furthermore, one tries to remain aware of one's life, one tries to hold on to the phenomena of life as much as possible at the very moment of death. And these are situations that must be overcome by one's practice, because they lead to no good. They are not fortunate situations. If one has practiced in an intermediate way and has received some signs, some indication of one's accomplishment, if one has achieved some level of faith and devotion, particularly of faith and devotion, these can be most comforting. If one has accumulated a great deal of merit and is confident in that, and particularly due to the blessing of one's practice, the mind has relaxed to some degree. If that has occurred, then one will not so much be afraid of the time of death. One will be resigned to death and relaxed at the time of death. That is a rare, but more commonly found condition amongst practitioners. Then the last condition, which is the most extremely beneficial, most extremely auspicious condition of all, and that is the condition of the accomplished practitioner, one such as His Holiness Dingo Khyentse Rinpoche. And that condition is that one is happy. One is joyful with expectation of the time of death. One looks forward to death. Death is the walking through the door of liberation, because one such as he only enters into nirvana. That is the only condition that one such as he can experience. He leaves the entrapment that he willingly engaged in to enter into the physical body. He leaves all of the entrapment and all the limitation of the physical body, all of its cumbersomeness that he willingly took on in order to be of benefit to sentient beings, and joyfully enters again into his natural state, because he is the Dharmakaya Lama, That is the natural state of awakening, of precious liberation, free of any contrivance, free of any limitation, the pure, luminous, wakeful state. One such as he enters into that state. I have heard stories of accomplished practitioners who were not well-known lamas, who at the time of their death looked forward with, like children look forward toward Christmas, to the time of their death, to experience that liberation, because they had tasted it in their practice, and they were confident enough in the stability of their practice to understand that there was nothing that could occur to them at the time of their death other than that precious wakeful state. Precious wakeful state. So there are many stories like that, and those lamas at the time of their passing left us signs by which to have faith. There is one lama that recently died within our own lineage here, who during the time of his cremation, the time was set up at an auspicious time where his body was to be cremated. There was monsoon, great rainstorm, all around the place of cremation, and everyone was afraid that the body could not be cremated properly. And the wonderful, miraculous thing that happened was that all around the monsoon poured, and right around the place of his cremation it was absolutely clear. There was no rain, and the sun shone. And it was just a small area, and one could see it looking around like that. And another sign that he left us was that his whole body was cooked during the cremation, to the point where there was no flesh left, really. And the bone, actually I have a piece of the bone, so I know that this is true. I know that this is true. The bone is charred almost to powder. It's just crumbly and charred to powder. But the heart remained perfectly raw within that cremation. And it is said that within the heart there were seed syllables like hum and ah and om. Syllables like that could be seen in the veins and the muscle tissue inside of the heart. So when I hear of the death of such a lama as that, I can only feel joy for them in one way, and confidence knowing that they will return for us again. I can feel tremendous rejoicing in the awesome, immeasurable benefit of such a path as this, that can consistently produce such visible, reportable, dependable, and repeatable results as these. There are many such stories of practitioners who died with conditions like that appearing to them, to their followers, as evidence of their practice. And there are many stories in which ordinary practitioners who practice sincerely every day and were not lamas had signs that indicated that they had accomplished their practice, and their passing was of the extraordinary kind. I can only give thanks for such a path that can produce such great blessing, and I can only again and again and again caution practitioners, spiritual practitioners, against engaging in spiritual practice that has not proven itself again and again and again to produce such results. One must follow the mind of enlightenment. One must achieve the results that have proven themselves to be of benefit through practicing a path that is given to us through such extraordinary channels as these, through the mind of enlightenment that is the Buddha nature. And yet, feeling this great confidence that he will return, feeling this great confidence in this path that produces again and again such extraordinary results, in my selfishness I can only grieve, because I had hoped, in my stupid ignorance, I had thought that since he had allowed me to sit with him while he meditated one time, thinking in my ignorance that every blessing is permanent and that all conditions will guarantee to rise again just as before, I thought that I would have that opportunity again. I thought that I would see him again. I thought that perhaps someday he would come to this temple and give it his blessing. But now I know that that will never happen until perhaps in the future, he appears again and accomplishes his practice and returns to us in such a form as to give us this blessing. But I know that we have lost something precious, more precious than food, more precious than anything of the world, more precious than life itself, because life we've had before and will have again. But what will we do with that life? Will that life be a perfect vehicle by which we can accomplish enlightenment? Will it be a perfect vehicle by which we can be of benefit to sentient beings? Only under that condition is this life precious or important at all, and only through the blessing of such a one as that can that be accomplished. So I know that in hearing this we all grieve at his passing. It should only, however, make us more firm in what we do from this point on, and how we consider our practice, and in how we hold the precious blessing of those lamas who are still in the world and who return again and again and again in order to be of benefit to us, to hook us into Dharma, and to help us to accomplish our practice. So thank you very much for coming today. I hope that speaking briefly about this event has in some way inspired you or been of some benefit to you. I hope that it makes you utilize your time here in some beneficial way. I hope it makes you realize something about yourself. So thank you very much.
So thank you very much for joining us. We're so happy to have you here with us today. And I hope that was helpful for you and gave you some thoughtful things to think about. And that, anyway, that's what I hope. Let's see. Today we have coming up this afternoon, actually, on this same channel, a teaching by Attira Zioli called, I think it's called Your Suffering is Not Special. I have to double check that, but yes, it's very close to that anyway. But Attira's teachings are always amazing. Attira is Jetsunma's daughter and heart student, and she has many of the same teaching qualities that Jetsunma does, the kind of direct and yet contemporary approach that really helps Westerners understand many of the things that are going on. So if you have time to tune in at 5, otherwise all of these, her teachings and as well as Jetsunma's, are archived on our YouTube site. If you got here through our website, tara.org, you can also just go directly to, you can go directly from our website, or you can go directly to YouTube slash Kunsang, search Kunsang Payol Choling, and you'll find us. And a vast array of teachings are available for you. I hope you find them nutritious in the spiritual kind of way. Also, we do these teachings of Jetsunma's, as you probably know, on Wednesday evenings at 7:30, as well as the Sunday morning teaching you just saw. So those are the two of those. We have, in addition, we have meditations on Saturday and Sunday mornings at 10, also on YouTube. And we have a variety of practices on Facebook Live. Most of our practices are on Zoom. You can find them on our calendar, tara.org. Go to events across the top and drop down to the KPC calendar. And if you click on the event, it will tell you how to get to it and what to do. So we hope you can be there. And enjoy that. And we hope to see you soon. The temple is now open on Saturday and Sundays from 11 to 4, the prayer room, for visitors to come and pray and be part of the spiritual energy that has accumulated here over the years. And we look forward to making that more and more. We're gradually moving toward being open, but always the outside is open for you. And there are just more and more things to enjoy outside as time progresses. So we have a fabulous statue of Guru Rinpoche that's on the porch awaiting its final destination and, stuffing and that sort of thing, but is spectacular even in this moment. So please come enjoy that. Enjoy the Statue of Liberty. Enjoy the farm animals and the parrots and, and just the spiritual refuge offered by the stupas and the land of many blessings. So we have always been so fortunate to have many lamas come and offer their blessings here. We like to share that with everyone. So we look forward to seeing you all. If you want to make an offering on the occasion of receiving a teaching, you can do so at Jetsunma directly at our PayPal address, which is jetsumagift@gmail.com. So that's my last announcement for the moment. I hope you have a wonderful week. Hope to see you soon. And be safe. And we just remember we love you. Take care.